Hello, world. Today we're talking to James Pacheco, who is the founder of his agency, Unbox. In running an agency, James has to switch between all sorts of different product contexts and environments. So we unpacked how he manages this complexity and delivers exceptional results for each of his clients. So let's let James take it away. James, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Love to start a little bit with you and kind of introduce yourself to everybody here. So can you give us the highlight reel of your career journey so far?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. We've obviously known each other for a little while, but I'll recap for listeners. I'm James. I run a small dev shop called Unboxed. We do a lot of 0 to 1 work for clients, and then some developer education type stuff as well. My career is kind of, I don't know, it's followed an interesting path. Back in college, I got an economics degree, and I started my career right out of school in finance. So I was a private equity analyst for Goldman Sachs for about a year and a half, and pretty quickly realized that for a number of reasons, and we can maybe dig into them if and when it makes sense. It wasn't the path I wanted to stay in, so I sort of quit to do something a little bit more entrepreneurial, but I didn't know what, so I had no concrete plan. And after a couple of months of sort of stumbling around and trying a few different things, I ended up going to a coding boot camp and learned iOS development, which was super awesome. I got a job as an iOS developer. It was really great, but I quickly realized that while it was a much better cultural fit than like the world of finance for me, I still I just didn't love traditional employment, I think is what it boiled down to. So I kind of jumped ship again and just did freelance iOS development. And then it organically grew into this dev shop thing. So now I think most of my time is spent almost as a product manager and like technical lead. I mentioned the dev shop Unboxed. We sort of build a lot of different things for clients, but like I said, mostly MVP type stuff. We do a lot of things in the blockchain space. So yeah, I mean, my focus is on learning new technologies and helping the devs that work with me learn those new technologies, trying to pull together the different people involved in a project and make sure that it goes off without a hitch.
Thank you so much. I forgot that we had such similar backgrounds because I also got an econ degree and
That's
stumbled into
right.
that space and didn't love it. So ended up making, I think, the best pivot of my life so far.
Agreed.
Was there, as you kind of were recounting that journey and maybe like around the time you were going to that boot camp, at what moment did you realize that technology is going to be really important for me?
Oh, interestingly enough, I think I obviously it depends on how you define technology, but I think I had that moment long before.
Hmm.
Before I actually pivoted to economics in college, I was a physics major. And so, and this is maybe weird, but all growing up, like I thought I was going to be a physicist. That was like my goal, my ambition, was to like study the stars and sort of make sense of the world through observation of the universe. And so like technology was always part of my plan. I don't know that I would have thought of it as software development, when I was younger, but I think I always knew that technology was important. Econ was almost like a really almost just like a side quest in the grand scheme of things, where I sort of realized that there was a whole avenue of knowledge and way of interpreting the world that had nothing to do with what I was familiar with before that, and it was new and exciting and interesting, and I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I did it. But ultimately, it wasn't my long term focus.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think when you were talking about kind of the blockchain stuff and sort of learning all these new technologies, um, being on that bleeding edge, how often are you feeling like I don't have enough technical knowledge here, or I don't understand what's going on, and what's your process for kind of attacking that subject matter and like really becoming an expert?
Yeah, that's this might sound arrogant, but I think it's a byproduct of having done it long enough. I don't often feel that way anymore.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is not that I don't feel like I'm out of my depth in a specific technology. I often don't understand a specific technology, but gone from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next often enough that I'm incredibly confident in picking up new things along the way. And so I don't often feel like, oh my gosh, this is hard and unfamiliar, right? There are common themes in all software frameworks. And so, maybe back in 2017, I avoided doing, Ethereum development because it felt strange and new. And I was only a few years into my software journey. But by 2021 ish, it was like, yeah, no, anything you throw at me in the software world, I'm going to figure it out. And even, even things that I would say are pretty far out of my depth, like hardware, for example, is not my thing. But if a client wanted me to do a project that involved hardware, it's like, yeah, I'd figure that out. I had some electronics classes in college when I was a physics major. Like we'll figure it out and we'll make it happen. There's sort of like a bigger picture to technology that once you see it, you can apply it in a lot of different ways. And so I think, I don't know if we're gearing towards trying to give people advice approaching technology, but it's like if you're earlier in that journey, just know that the more you learn, the easier it is to learn.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that framing. It's funny. I remember being a very junior engineer, and I was at a hackathon, and I was talking to a senior engineer, and they were going to be my partner. And I was like, "Well, what languages do you program in?" And they like it was like the textbook of every single programming language that existed at that time, and I was just blown away. I was like, "How could you know 20 to 30 different programming languages? Like I barely know two. Like I'm trying to figure it out, and they just had it all figured out." And now, kind of in those shoes, it's like, well, of course they figured it out. Like they knew that they could keep learning and they could keep applying the principles and picking up. It's just a matter of syntax, right? At the end of the day, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, how do we go from here? Um, when I talk to senior devs, that sort of confidence that I can figure it out, I can push myself to go learn this stuff is palpable, right, in that conversation. And like you said, I think it's because we understand the framework, we understand like that bigger picture of technology. But for those folks who are just starting out, that's pretty new. So do you have any advice for building that landscape and like that scaffolding that lets you dig deeper into all these different languages and frameworks?
Um, I don't know that I have any like secret. I think unfortunately, we're always looking for shortcuts in life, and there really is no shortcut for experience. That being said, I do think trusting yourself and going out and getting that experience as soon as possible is like what I would advise. I'm a relatively confident individual, and even so, I remember like the first year of doing software development and feeling like I had to, you know, defer or ask a bunch of questions to more senior developers. Which, by the way, it's great to ask questions to sort of shortcut your learning, but there's a type of question that comes from a place of insecurity, of like, I can't make decisions on my own. And maybe it's cliche, but my advice is like, don't be afraid to fail. Just try new things. Like attack it yourself, and then don't be afraid to get negative feedback. That's going to be better for you than asking someone, how do I do this step by step? Because you'll learn more by blazing your own trail and failing, and then having someone else correct you, than by sort of saying like, hey, how do I do this thing step by step? Right? You'll always need the step by step playbook if that's always how you approach it, right? And again, this is not to say that you shouldn't leverage, mentors and that kind of thing. Quite the opposite. It's me saying like you should have mentors, but the way you use them, in my opinion, should be maybe a little bit more retroactive. Like I do the thing first, and then I ask my mentor, how could I have done this better? As opposed to, hey, tell me exactly what to do from the start. I just think you learn more that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That learn by doing mentality, I think it's really critical, and something I have certainly benefited from. And I like that framing. I feel like, yeah, when I was a junior, I made that mistake of like, tell me how to do this. I don't really know how to approach this problem, and I always benefited from, I think, some wise senior leaders being like, no, go figure it out, go fail, have that safe space, and then we'll talk about it in retro and figure it out. I love that. Well, switching gears a little bit more. Um, as you run your agency today, what and you used to, I think, be a little bit more in-house. Have What are like the biggest differences between like agency life and sort of in-house life, and how do you how has that evolved over time?
Um, I think for me, the agency life is more varied. I right like every client has different needs and different technologies and things that they're working on. So I might be doing on-chain Solana development one day, but then I'm doing front-end development the next day. Working in Rust one moment, working in TypeScript another, then doing a mobile app for a client where we're writing in Swift and doing like native iOS stuff. Um, so it's super varied, and again, that for me has made it possible to kind of do what you were saying earlier about like the seniors who know a bunch of different languages. It's not that I sort of advocate for like, yeah, go learn a ton of languages, but by working in a lot of different technologies, you see the themes between them, and it's that's pretty cool. Being in house, obviously, there are plenty of in house development jobs where you're still gonna get a lot of variety. But generally speaking, it's like if you're a mobile dev at X software company, it's like you're writing your app in native Swift or native Kotlin for Android, and so you're pretty focused on one thing. Um, and there's nothing wrong with that. I actually don't think there's one that's better or worse than the other for you becoming a great technologist. The only thing that the agency life gives me that I didn't get in house is honestly it's less about the technical and more about like the business consideration side of things. I see a lot of different businesses that I do work for. I see why we might choose one technology over the other for business reasons, not purely technical architecture reasons. Which I do think that's helpful for developers, because you kind of understand that there's more to these decisions and more to technology than just the technology, right? Like where the money's coming from and what are the incentives behind doing it one way over the other. That also matters. In many cases, it matters more than your architectural considerations, because without the money, like the app doesn't get made, type of thing. But I think both paths are valid, and it's like a personality thing almost. It's which, are you someone who likes to be a generalist, who likes to understand everything about everything, or do you want to just dive as deep as humanly possible into, one specific thing?
Mhm. Yeah. I think you were touching on this earlier when you were saying you've gone from more of like a developer role to like a product manager role, and like having that expanded exposure to like the business side of the equation. What's like something that surprised you in that transition, and how has your technical background empowered you to like be more productive as that sort of PM?
I think that's a good question. I need to sort of consolidate my thoughts here.
Hmm.
Uh, Software and really like anything technical. I mean, mathematical thinking, logical thinking is, I think, so different from how humans naturally think, right? Like humans naturally think in intuitive leaps, rather than sort of like cold calculated logic. Like this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Doing software development sort of trains you to think about things very meticulously, right? I mean, I think anyone who's done software, we've like had the analogy of, like tell someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly, but like the instructions are super vague, and so when you follow the instructions like to the T, you like it's totally wrong. And so again, it's like human brain fills in the gaps with intuition, but you learn to get a lot more specific with your thinking when you do software. I do think that's helpful for uh, everything in life. The thing that differs though is that whereas in software you've got all these deterministic components where, I know that if this line of code is executed, then this next line will be executed. uh, as you zoom out and start to work at like a business level, a product level, the building blocks end up being people, not code. And people are not quite as deterministic, right? Like those intuitive leaps that I'm talking about, like people take that with your own instructions of what you want them to do or what you want them to accomplish. And I think there's this hybrid approach where you lean into that non-determinism almost, and you trust that like your teams are more than the sum of their parts. And right. And so like I kind of lean into relatively vague instructions there, trusting that when you zoom out, it ends up working out. This is like tough. I feel like the analogy I would maybe give is like how we see quantum mechanics as like this very probabilistic thing, but when you zoom out far enough, it does become deterministic, right? Like we can depend on electricity working the way that we think it works,
Mhm.
and like the world goes around the way it's supposed to. And so similarly, like I think there's this hybrid nature where there's this sort of like non-deterministic component, but then if you zoom out far enough, it is deterministic. And so learning to recognize where that matters and what you can count on and what you can't, is kind of cool. I don't know. I'm really not explaining that well, but like I see it as cool, right?
Mhm.
I see it as cool that the building blocks of my business are not quite as reliable as code, in the sense that you know exactly what's going to happen, but in other ways are more reliable in that they surprise you with things you never would have thought could be done.
Yeah, I like that framing there, and it's funny thinking about our own experience. Like sometimes we'll work with PMs who are not super technically savvy, or they are maybe a little more junior in their career, and they like to be very explicit with all the instructions that they give the dev team, and they're like, it's got to be done this way, and this is what we're looking for. But sometimes that's like very limiting, especially if they don't have that technical background, because they might send you down the wrong path, or the requirements don't make sense. Versus when we work with someone maybe a little more senior or who has that technical background, who knows that the engineers are going to figure it out, their guidance is much more hands off, like you're describing. And there's more of like that trust relationship there, where as long as we're pretty clear on the general direction we need to go, the end result's going to be it's going to be better than anything we could have dreamed of, because we have that space for collaboration and for iteration, and for optimizing that a really cut and dry ticket's not going to give you. Has that resonated with your experience at all?
100%. Like there's not there like for sure you have to give engineers excuse me, you for sure have to give engineers like some constraints, right? It's like we have a product feature we want to build, and there's a reason that we want to build it, so like there are some constraints around it. It's not just like go build whatever you want. But I don't want to tell you how to build it, because as an engineer who like still does a fair amount of dev work, I am aware that I don't know the current implementation nearly as well as the devs that are working on it right now. There could be a million reasons why the way that I spell out that they should do it doesn't work with the current code base. And so actually you spell it out in depth because you think that you're going to save time or be more efficient somehow, but it actually ends up being the opposite, because now you've boxed them into doing it a really specific way, and you don't realize that for them to do it that way, they actually have to change all these other things about the code base. And so this thing that should have been like a small feature is actually a big rewrite of like large portions of the code. And it'd be so much easier to just be like, hey, this is the general idea that we're going for. This is what we're trying to accomplish for users. I'd love for you to go figure out the best way to do that. Let me know if like there's ambiguity and you can tackle it in a few different ways, and if you want me to weigh in. But like generally, I trust you. Go figure it out, kind of thing. And even if what they come back to you with is something that you've got to tweak or modify, I do feel like, again, over once you zoom out, it is more efficient that way, I think people are really averse to like not things not being right the first time around. But again, you learn through experience, and like those iterations are how you get to the best end result.
Hmm. Absolutely, especially in like I feel like in the remote world that we're operating within today, there's this pressure to, like you said, nail it on the first go because you don't have that communication that like let's go get in a room together and figure it out. Like that's sort of missing these days, and so you have to be really intentional with like we're going to collaborate on this and we're going to talk about it and we're going to make space and time to actually iterate on this thing and get it polished to that place. Has that resonated where like remote work makes that a little bit harder versus being in office and or are you guys seeing the opposite?
You know, I've been doing remote work for so long that I'm not going to lie, it's hard for me to even make that comparison. Like I know you and I worked at Lambda for a little bit together, and there was some in office work there, but also a lot of the team was remote. Um, but outside of that, it's like I've been working remotely since 2016. So it's been almost a decade, and really very little in office experience there. That being said, like I do think uh, you there is a balance between letting people go off and do things on their own and needing to check in periodically, right? I personally find that with my teams, like daily stand-ups, it's too much, right? And maybe that's a personality thing. I'm not going to assert that that's like how all things should work, but we don't do daily stand-ups. We do 2 stand-ups a week, and that ends up being sufficient. And then we just have open communication in Slack, and we're willing to jump into a huddle anytime, and that works. I have a lot of my team. We're spread across different time zones, so I think. Sorry, excuse me. I think we have team members in like 9 hours ahead of me, and
Mhm.
I'm fortunate enough that they're willing to work a little bit late in their day in order to get some overlap. But as long as we've got 3 or so hours of overlap for collaboration every day, that ends up being sufficient, right? And we don't check in every single day, but we do check in most days. Like if you look at our Slack, it's not just like constant conversation all day, because I want people, myself included, to be able to get into deep work that you can't do when you're being bombarded with messages. But that overlap time, which for us is like my 10 to 1ish, right, is where there's kind of time zone overlap, is is incredibly important. And most days we end up jumping in a huddle to figure something out. And not everyone does that on the same day, right? So it's like I might be in huddles more than most people because I'm managing 3 projects, but like my devs are assigned to one at a time, kind of thing. So it's like I might be in huddles, most days in the mornings, but my devs, it's like they get to do deep focused work, check in twice a week for sure, maybe check in another day of the week. Um, and frankly, they probably collaborate with each other even more than that. It's like we very much encourage each other to like to collaborate even if they're not staffed on the same project.
Mhm.
So like, which is also nice for me because that means that if someone needs help, they're not necessarily coming to me, right? Like they can work with each other and figure things out, and I'm only pulled in on an as needed basis.
Yeah, I love that. There's I in talking to a lot of folks about this stuff now, culture keeps coming back as like a theme where like the culture that you cultivate in your organization around collaboration, around building that trust to go seek each other out when we're struggling, that psychological safety that it's okay to not have the answer or it's okay to fail and we'll figure it out together is so critical and so important. Do you have any specific rituals or practices you like to do to cultivate that, or has it kind of emerged organically as you built your team?
It definitely emerged organically. I'm trying to be more intentional as we grow.
Hmm.
We sort of the the peak of our team size was probably in like the 10 to 12 range, and that was probably 2023 ish. I started a new startup last year that you're familiar with, that sort of derailed me away from growing the dev shop for a year, and so we sort of scaled back a little bit in order to manage both those things. We're growing again, and this time I'm trying to be far more intentional about the culture. The way that it grew organically really just is like the culture is me, right? There's no way around that. I started the company. Everyone that's here with us, like I personally brought on board, and so the culture is just what stems from me naturally and what makes sense to me. And it's not that dissimilar from like the way that the culture in my family has grown organically, right? Like the way that my wife and I work together and work with our kids. It's just like there's things that we value that we naturally instill in our kids, um, and so it is kind of similar. Uh, I would say the one thing that I have always done is tried to be very honest and clear about what I value, right? So like I just have always reiterated over and over and over again. I'm sure that sometimes it's annoying that that I'm still talking about how like about all the things that I care about, but that is the only way that I think culture sticks, is if you're just reiterating it over and over again. I'm sure I'm gonna have to be do things differently as we grow, right? Like I'm sure there's a scale of how many people are involved in this company where I can no longer personally set the culture. I need to like do other things to try and make sure this culture propagates through the way that I want it to. That being said, I'm also okay with the culture not being me at some point, right? Like it's me right now because we're small enough that that's what makes sense. But if the company gets to a point where it's bigger than that, it's not mine anymore, right?
Mhm.
Like I may have been pivotal in it coming about, but it's no longer my company in that sense. And I am open to that culture shifting and changing, and me having to adapt to it a little bit.
I love that. I think a lot of founders, I think, are afraid of that, where they, it's like, it feels like, kind of like I imagine your kids growing up. My kids are little, so I have seen this only in bits and spurts, but they, as they become their own person, it's like you see less of your impact and more of them kind of, taking on that personality and making their own decisions. So it can be scary, but I think, like you're saying, it is that it's a good problem to have, right? Because that's how you've grown it to such a place that you've been successful in that endeavor, and it's taking on a life of its own, so to speak, which is amazing. I wanted to dig into your agency experience a little bit more, because us running an agency too, we have a lot of overlaps there. And in our experience, people obviously hire us to do a project, right? They want to build something, but sort of implicitly, they're hiring us because their existing product practice is not delivering what they want, right? Otherwise, they build it themselves. So either they have a team that needs capacity or is dysfunctional in some way and they just can't make it happen, or they're a new startup and they don't have a product practice and they're just trying to get off the ground. And so we spend a lot of our time leveling up their product abilities and trying to like instill best practices within them. Is that the case for y'all as well? And can you tell us like how do you typically coach and guide those organizations through that process?
Yeah. We, you sort of mentioned like a couple different client profiles there, right? Existing organizations with existing product practices, and then brand new startups that maybe just don't have it at all.
Hmm.
We work more with the latter.
Okay.
Um, so so it's more, the education is less at an organization level and more at a personal level,
Hmm.
right? Where it's like, hey, you're a first time founder. Um, and by the way, there's plenty of things that you do well in business probably that I don't, but I do understand sort of software products
Hmm.
and how to approach that. So like let's talk about that. And and again, I don't think there's anything formal there. It's just uh, we always meet with our clients at least once a week, right? So like I've got a standing meeting once a week with our clients, and it naturally comes up in those meetings that if they don't understand how we're approaching a thing or why we're approaching it this way, I'm going to help them understand why, and they can ask questions, they can push back, maybe they change my mind on some things. But it's like I have been doing this for over a decade, and so usually it's me helping them understand what's going on. Every once in a while they'll expose a gap in how I'm thinking about things, which is also great. But again, it's pretty informal. It's just, hey, I know that I'm going to see you at least half an hour a week, usually more, in the same way that like I've got a couple meetings with my devs, but we also chat more throughout the week. Similar type of thing. We try to be in regular communication with our clients. Yeah, and I think because I work with a lot of startups, a lot of my clients are new to this, and I enjoy helping them navigate what it's like to build a product. Um, I also enjoy them not having to worry about it, right? Like I think our biggest value add to clients is, hey, we are going to do this really well, but also we're going to do it in such a way that it is not taking time and energy from you, right? Like we're going to take that 30 minutes a week, and if that's all you want to give us, like we'll be fine with that. We can work independently, and we'll make this work, and we'll deliver a great product so that you can focus on all the other things, right? So there are some clients that just don't care, right? Like they just want to pay to have a product built, and they want to go do marketing, they want to go do business development, fundraising, whatever. Which again, I sort of mentioned this earlier. In many ways, those are the more important functions of a business. Uh, of course, there actually isn't a more important, because it's like without a product, you got nothing to sell. But without funding and partnerships and marketing, you don't sell the product. So like they're both equally important. But I think it's easy as devs to forget that like there is a whole other part of the business that really matters, and a product doesn't exist without it. So our goal is to really just take that off of people's shoulders. And if they want to learn more and they want to learn how to like operate products on their own, great. But if not, like that's also okay. Inevitably, there comes a time with early stage startups where they're going to want to pull that product team in house, and that's when I'll be a little bit more um, like, hey, I need to spend some time with you so that you know how to manage this organization without me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's a lot of clients just don't. It's like they just want someone else to handle it, in which case maybe we'll help them hire the right person to manage that team rather than teach it to them. It's inevitable that they pick some of this up through osmosis, though, just by participating and seeing how it all works. The best clients, who have, I think, the highest chance of success in the long run, definitely do figure out, I think, a lot of the key points about how to run a product org.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Is there something that like they clients consistently underestimate when it comes to building product, like as you as you were coaching and collaborating with them?
I mean, it's cliche that like everyone always underestimates the cost and the time it takes to build things out, for sure. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything beyond that cliche though that they underestimate. Probably this, and this is like more from a product management and like UX design perspective. I think people always underestimate the difficulty of planning out the product. And I'm not talking like the actual software and tech. I just mean like the user experience, the what actually is this product and what do we want it to do for people. Um, I mean, that's one of the reasons I brought you on to help at Elements is, early on is it's like, yeah, I know that we're going to need someone who's pretty dedicated to not only the visual design here, but like what is the product experience at a granular level. Because I think everyone's like, yeah, I've got this great idea. It's going to be super simple. Like users are just going to do X, Y, and then Z will happen. And it's like, yep, that's not how it's going to work. Like they're going to do a million other things that you're not anticipating, or you, because it's your idea, you think that it's going to be really simple to know that after you do X, you're supposed to do Y. But 90% of users are going to come in and they're going to do X and be like, well, what now? Right. So there's sort of underestimating the importance of the design and product planning phase, if you will.
Mhm.
And then also underestimating how iterative that process has to be, right? It's like you're going to think that you've planned it out, and then it's going to go get built, and then you're going to be like, it's still not there,
Mhm.
and you're going to iterate, right? And so, and that's literally, that's just how it works, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually think that's exciting. So helping clients understand that that's part of the process. That like, hey, the reason we meet weekly is so that we've got weekly iterations, right? Like we're going to show you something week one and it's going to be a pile of garbage, but that's good because we're going to take that pile of garbage and we're going to like sculpt it a little better in week two, and then a little better in week three, and a little better in week four. And by 3 months, you'll have like a really solid product. Like you can build some really freaking great things in 3 months, right? And you can launch something before that, right? And get real user feedback and continue that iteration. We try to have our engagements last approximately 3 months at a minimum. Doesn't always happen. I get there's cost considerations and other things, but generally we're shooting for 3 months so that we can have like a prototype that we can show users in month one, and then we can iterate for a couple of months on user feedback and really like leave the client with something that they're super proud of.
Mhm. I love that you brought up all those things because we see the same things, and that a big part of like the technically lit purpose, right, is like that interplay between product and design and technology doesn't get talked about enough. I think it's
It
really
doesn't.
like everyone's in their little world, their silo, which is important, and we need that. But that ability to go between those disciplines and be like, this is like the user need, like what pain they're having right now. Here's how we visualize this in an experience. Here is the technology that's going to make that possible. And like translation between all those pieces is it's hard. It's like it's sort of this, like you said, that it's no wonder people underestimate it because it's sort of hidden and it's secret, unless you're like really immersed in this world here. Have there been like some experiences along your journey where you've like seen the friction between all these different worlds, and how did you like kind of come about like getting through that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there's a lot more friction between, product management and software engineering and design. I think at larger organizations where those are like separate groups, if you will. When you've got much smaller teams where it's just like, you know, I asked you, Nick, to work with, one of my developers, and I mean, maybe that's a bad example because you're both a designer and a software engineer. Like it's really easy for you guys to work together. But pull in any designer and say like, hey, I want you to work with this developer, and also like this person is sort of your technical product lead. They're gonna also jump in and help direct the product a little bit. Three people tend to get along great regardless of their roles. But once you're like, this is the engineering department and this is the product department and this is the design department, it's weird how it becomes an us versus them thing.
Mhm.
Uh, Engineers like think that the designs designers are giving them are stupid and like really fight against it, and the designers think that the engineers are just like really stubborn and bullheaded and never want to try new things. And product is over here like nobody understands what the users need and like you're all dumb. And it just becomes this like point the finger blame game, which is really unfortunate. And to be fair, I don't know the solution at scale. It's part of why I left and started freelancing and slowly built up this dev shop, is because I think small agile teams do a really really good job naturally if you get the right people, and they don't need a whole lot of like, I don't know, guardrails and frameworks. It's like just get three great people in a room and they figure it out and do great work, and we can do that for clients, so let's do that.
Yeah, that's very real. I think like it's definitely something that I've seen, and again, part of why I think also gravitate towards startups is you don't have to deal with that. That's just too much overhead and too much yeah, just dysfunction to like want to have to figure out and wrangle. But at the same time, like something that we work with clients of all shapes and sizes, and we've certainly stepped into larger organizations where that is there, that those vibes and feelings are present. One of and sometimes our mandate is, can you fix this? Like, can you actually break down these barriers here? And we really lean into like shared ownership and like trying to, it's not engineering owning this project and product and design, it's we come up with squads and pods and try and have cross-functional groups kind of own initiatives. Have you seen that work as well? And if not, like what do you like to try and do?
Yeah, I think what you're describing is trying to bring that small group mentality into a large organization, which I think is the way it's got to happen, right? Like the solution is to get rid of that us versus them mentality. So if you're creating like a small pod to own a specific project, and that pod is consists of a couple people from engineering and a designer, and a product lead or something, um, yeah, it's like you're replicating that startup feel where it's like, oh, now we're in this together, and we all have a shared goal, and the goal isn't make design look better than engineering or make engineering look better than design. The goal is like, no, we're all here working on this feature, and let's make it happen. I think I don't know. It's a little bit like the shape up approach that the Basecamp guys, they've got another name now. I don't remember. 32 Signals, maybe, is that what it is?
Yeah, I just know, I know
But
Basecamp.
they're like shape up, product approach is I think pretty similar, where it's just like, yeah, we have a general idea, and then we let we create a small team of 3 to 4 people, that's sort of consists of all the functions that you need to bring this about, and they shape this thing together and they own it together. And I personally think that makes the most sense everywhere, even in a large organization. I think there are aspects of large organizations that make that tough, because it's like, oh, technically I'm in design and I report to so and so, but on a day-to-day basis I work with these different 3 people, and so that can be a little tough. But if you can find a way to like make the groups smaller and have that shared ownership, sounds like the dream.
Absolutely. Kind of building on that and touching on some of the stuff we've talked about so far, how has your perspective on like what good product means evolved over your time?
When I considered myself a dev, and I still consider myself a dev, but when that was like my sort of only professional identity,
Hmm.
I think I greatly over-indexed the importance of the code and the architecture of the code, and like it being quote unquote perfect. And don't get me wrong, like being a quality craftsman is hugely important, and I expect that from the people that I work with. Like I expect great code quality, but also not at the expense of speed, not at the expense of delivering what clients actually want, right? It's okay if the architecture is not exactly what you want it to be. And no, I don't want you to spend 3 months rewriting the code for a startup. Like they don't know if this product works yet, right? Like they don't know if anyone wants it. Like what matters here is getting something working out there so that people can use it, and you can know how they're using it, and why, and then you can make things better. You can make the things better that actually need to be better and that actually matter. um I don't know. That's like one thing that comes to mind. The question was, how has my thinking about like what makes good products changed?
Yeah, or like just the
So
practice of good product. Yeah.
yeah, I mean like that's from the technical side. I think as someone who works on a lot of products now, interestingly, I would also say the same is true with with like everything, right? Like you think that the design, the visual design is the most important thing, or the copy is the most important thing. And it's like none of these little components matter as much as you think they do. What matters is that a user's problem is being solved. Users will put up with a lot of really bad experiences if the one thing that they actually need is there. And so like a good product is not necessarily a beautiful product. And I used to think that was like what made a good product. And don't get me wrong, that polish helps and it's great, and hopefully all startups get there, right? But a beautiful product that doesn't solve a problem people care about is a bad product, you know.
Mm.
And it, I think that's, it's a really simple thing where it's just like, hey, whatever you think makes a good product, you're probably wrong. The only thing that makes it good is that like it solves the problem people care about, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then all those other things that I just told you are wrong, like you can add those on and it'll make their experience better, and it will like help with retention, and it will, you know, get people to talk to their friends about it. That's all good. Like that's all good stuff. And I'm not saying never do that, but it is not the core. It is not the meat of the product that people really need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny when we work with teams, we call it a lot like multiplying by zero. Like if you don't solve the pain for anybody or your customer in particular, anything you put on the other side of that equation, you're effectively multiplying by zero, right? It doesn't matter whether you're doing marketing or development or design. If you're not framing it with that appropriate pain context, it's basically wasted effort, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so in the context of like client work and development, sometimes we have the client saying we really want this feature, or we really want this feature set or this product built, and we know like there's no customer pain being solved here. We've done research and it's like not panning out. How do you negotiate that sort of interaction?
That is, I think, the toughest part of agency work, if if I'm being honest, right? Is uh, I do not own the product, right? Ultimately, if you want me to build it and you want to pay me to build it, I will, but I have to tell you as many times as you'll let me that I think it's a bad idea, because I would like you to come back and keep working with me, and you're not going to do that if the product doesn't solve a problem, and you know the business doesn't take off. So it is this weird um, thing, right, where the incentives are such that like my optimal case is that you listen to me and we build the right thing. But also, if you really don't want to do that, I'll still make the thing you want me to make. I just wish you would listen to me. And I honestly, I pretty much just say it like that. I'm a pretty candid person. And so if you're a client and you're saying, hey, I really want to build this feature, I think it's really, really neat, I probably just tell you, hey, what we're seeing from usage shows that, I just really don't think that's going to make a ton of sense. Uh, is there any way that you would reconsider, or do you have data to suggest that that actually is useful? Like, have you had conversations with users that I haven't had? Um, because this really just seems like it's going to derail us from the thing that matters most. And give them an opportunity to prove me wrong. And if they can't, then it's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Do you still want us to do it? Because we will, but I would rather we be building something we feel conviction in, that we know is going to work. I clients know that, for at least from my perspective, we are partners, right? I don't want to just be a hired gun. I want to be a partner in this. And I don't necessarily mean like an equity partner or this or that, although that happens sometimes. I just mean that my goals align with their goals. We're on the same team. I'm not over here telling you that you're wrong and we shouldn't do this because we're adversarial with each other. I'm telling you, like, hey, as a friend, as a partner, as someone who cares about the success of this product, I'm struggling to understand this decision. Could you please help me understand this decision? Um, and if you want to put your foot down and just say, as the person footing the bill, go do it, I will do that. Like, I make that very clear from the beginning, that like I know my place here, that I am a minority partner, I'm a lesser partner here, but please let me speak my piece and then tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely tricky. And I think it comes down a lot to the individual too. But what I think sometimes though, in like people's popular conception of like how product gets built, you get that Steve Jobs visionary who's like, this is the way that we're gonna like change the world. And then you have the reality of like people practicing products, which is the iterative, user research driven kind of response and quote unquote like the one true way or the right way to do it. But we also there is something to be said for having a vision and like
Yeah.
we want to drive towards this or a bigger overarching narrative there. How do you can those two worlds be reconciled? Like how do you maintain that sort of big picture um, sort of certainty
Yeah.
which you kind of need to be an entrepreneur with the actual day to day we're going to get there.
This is the counterintuitive bit, right? Which is that I actually think the best products do sometimes come out of left field. And I wouldn't have necessarily thought that it was going to work and that it was solving a problem, and then it does. Which is why I'm acknowledging to clients up front, like, I will do what you tell me to do. If you have enough conviction that you want to both pay for this to be made against my objections, then like let's do it, right? Prove me wrong where it actually counts. And look, I'm okay with that. The reason that I'm running an agency is that I'm not supposed to be the idea guy here. I'm supposed to help you bring your idea to fruition. So I'm going to do my very best to do that, but ultimately, like, you are in charge, as the client, and I will listen to you, and I will build what you want to build because you are the visionary. Now, are most clients actually visionary Steve Jobs? Probably not. But I think, again, if they're willing to pay for it, if they're willing to try, I'm also willing to try. Um, and you often are surprised at what people care about and what people really gravitate to and want. Um, it's almost, you asked about reconciling them. I would just say the last little bit here. It's again, it's like that micro macro thing. Is on the macro level, maybe I don't understand it, but I can still do the product iteration on a micro level. I can still build your vision, and we can still iterate on it and make it better based on user feedback and that sort of thing. Um, doesn't mean that we need to have perfect data from the beginning, right? Like, I think I actually caught a clip of you talking to Mitchell, where like he was talking about the importance of recognizing like data's limitations. Totally agree with that, right? Like again, I think the visionaries are visionaries because they're seeing something that isn't in the data, that's not there, and that's okay. It's a bet, it's a gamble, and sometimes people lose money on it, but like that's what startups are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, it's that tension between quantitative and qualitative data and when I work with clients and they come in with that sort of visionary attitude, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they're so steeped in their subject matter that they truly are an expert, and that's sort of my best hope for the I'm missing this level of expertise, and they're seeing, like you said, that pattern that's unrecognizable to the untrained eye. Um, and I love the idea of like, okay, that may be the case and I'm wrong, but let's go prove it out. Let's not just kind of blindly go and build it. Let's still follow that good approach and get there together. um
Yeah.
this is sort of a fun question, but if you had a magic wand that you could wave and change something that or give some knowledge to everybody maybe who's looking to work with you as a client, what would that be?
Give some knowledge to someone trying to work with me as a client. Um, I mean, I think it would be, yeah, I think if I'm being completely honest, right, it's like because I know that we're going to handle the product side of things, I would magically bestow upon clients or prospective clients all the skills required to like run the rest of the business effectively, right? Uh, would really be a shame if I built a great product and your business fails for other reasons. So I think in a perfect world, I would have clients that just like they are fantastic at marketing and partnerships and getting the word out there and selling the product because then I know that what we're building is at least going to have a chance at making it in front of the right people, and those are always the best products, right? Like there we've done plenty of work for clients that um, don't really execute on the business side of things, and that's always unfortunate. I think is probably the saddest part about working for early stage startups um, and small businesses is that maybe they don't know how to execute on the other side of things. I think as I've dabbled in startups myself and things like I've learned a little bit about marketing and business development and those kinds of things, and I try to impart that knowledge to clients who I can tell are new to the space. Um, More importantly, I try to put them in touch with people who are much better than I am at those kinds of things and like get them the right resources. But it would be great to just have that magic wand that you can just wave and be like, yes, you are an expert here. Like you now have the knowledge equivalent as if you've done this 10 times already successfully. And we're just going to build the product for you and know that you're going to get the product in front of the right people.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's funny. We were talking to a first time founder this week who they're new to this. They're a coach. They're building a product in the education space, and they've got a very clear vision. But again, they don't have product experience. They don't really have marketing experience. And when we were advising them, kind of understanding a little bit more about the project, they were very surprised to learn that we were advising the product side. It's going to be pretty cut and dry. It's going to be pretty straightforward. We know how to get there. Your job is going to be the marketing and the audience building and the sales effort that goes into this. So I wish I had that magic wand too. That would be that would be a good thing for everybody. Last but not least, is there something you want everybody to check out today? Either something you're building or the best thing you've seen recently?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot of work for clients that are doing great things on the Solana blockchain. So I know that sounds a little crazy to some people who aren't familiar with blockchain. I think crypto has a little bit of a negative connotation, but there are some really cool things being built. One of our clients right now, Etherfuse, they are working on. They call them stable bonds, but it's basically tokenized government bonds. They've got bonds from Mexico and Brazil and Europe, the EU, US treasuries. But it's a really cool, financial primitive that I think is going to make foreign exchange cheaper, right? It'll be cheaper to send money across borders, but also cheaper to convert between different currencies and that kind of thing. So there's things like that are really, really cool that we help people with. And then obviously, I'd be remiss not to just say like, hey, if you are an early stage startup or a first time founder or, who maybe is in the blockchain ecosystem or even if you're not in blockchain, like we do a lot of stuff, not in crypto that where like anything that I've said here sounds compelling. Like I'd love to chat. So you can go to my website and check us out and would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Yeah, work with James. He's awesome. So definitely would recommend as well. Well, James, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. This has been super fun.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.